All right, we're going to shoot a little video of a gear swap out on an Xpert KD1 series servo. I picked up the gear set, got it through Hobby Authority. So what I've got done so far is I've actually got the screws loosened up. So we'll take the screws out. Yeah, maybe not quite as loosened up as I thought they were. There we go. So I get all the screws taken out. Now these servos are going on 5 years old, been through a lot of flights. So my thought was, let's go through and just do a gear swap, change the gears out, lubricate it up, just do some maintenance on it. What I've got picked up here is some high-tech servo grease. Traxxas makes, there's a lot of different brands of servo gear lubricant. Pick one up and they'll all do the trick for you. All right, so take this thing off, see what she looks like inside. All right, so that's what it looks like inside. Got a handful of gears. To be honest, I don't know what the names are of these gears, but I will take note of how they're put in, lay them out on the table in front of me here, and kind of use that as a guide to put it back together. Let's go ahead and open up the package, take all the other gears out, drop them all right here. All right. So get my gears to go on, get them all placed out here so I have them on the table in front of me. I like to kind of orient things so I can kind of see how they go back. So I place this one here. You've got the bearing that goes in the upper case. We've got this one here which goes upside down. This one goes underneath there. So they kind of go in like that. So it's kind of the orientation. This piece right here, as you can see right there, that piece right there, that's what keys inside. If you look at how this goes together, see how that's keyed in there? All right. And that piece right there, keys in there as well. So when it goes down on top of the servo motor, those pins will align with those two cutouts. Okay. So I'll work on pulling the bearing out. There's a bearing in this upper case. So I'll work on pulling that out offline, but basically that bearing will come out. This is the new bearing that goes in. Okay. So let's do that offline. And I'll probably replace the shafts offline. No sense in letting you watch me struggle with getting those two little shafts in there. All right, so let's go ahead and pull these off. First one out. And I'm going to grab a pair of little forceps here to help me pull some of these parts. I'm always afraid to pull too hard on these things for fear that I'm going to tear something up, right? But if these things can survive me flying, they should be able to survive me taking the bearings out. Oh, so that's what that bearing goes. So that's the bearing that goes actually under the main gear here. At first I thought it was the bearing that went on top. I'll try a little screwdriver here to pry that up. There we go. It's a little easier. Work it out the top. Just trying to get that off that servo mount. Or the drive motor. I think it's like the drive motor output shaft. So that goes there. All right, and then there's that bearing. So see that little bearing right there? I bet you that's the bearing that was in the replacement kit, so we'll pull that off. Gotta take it off anyway to get that lower gear out. Yeah, everything's nice and tight in here. Nice and tight fit. Once again, this is probably that moment where I'm gonna say, all right, sorry, you gotta watch me fight this. There's probably a trick to this that I just don't know. Like maybe put a pair Put a little screwdriver underneath it and try and pry it up, but that's not big enough or too small. So we'll struggle with that for a bit. Okay, so I got the bearing out. That bearing was right here. So what I'll do is I get this. So the bearing came out. When I got the bearing out, I got this gear out here. This is the gear that goes back in that position right there. So that gear goes back in the middle there. And I got to put the shaft back in. So I just grabbed a pair of pliers and pulled the shaft out. So the shaft just goes in there. So let's go ahead and put the shaft back in. So put the shaft in. Put that lower gear back in. Now, probably should put the shaft in after I put the gear in because you got to have that gear in there first. So just from the standpoint of the way it fits, the gear goes in, it sits down in there. All right, so it marries up right in there. So when that's done in there, then we take this little shaft, all this little fine detail work. I don't have fingers for it. So that shaft's back in there. So we got the shaft in. Now, if I remember right, this is the fun part, right? How does it all go together and how does it all come back out? So let's put the bearing back down. So the bearing goes back on here. So the bearing goes right there. Put the bearing back on. Fun part is to do it without tearing it up, right? Always the fun part. All right. Bearings back in. So we've got the bearing back on. We've got the lower gear in. And this little key. All right, that little key. That goes back in there. Line it up with the square on the shaft. There we go. So we put that back down in there. So we got that back down in. And what else? Was it this? Did that go? And then, was that how it went together? Might be. So let's see. So the key to putting this back together is, you see there's the little slots right there. See the little slots? All right, line up with the key. So I try to get those at least crossways. Line that up crossways and put it on. Makes it everything's a nice tight fit. All these tight tolerances. And we put our servo back together. Now from here, I'll just make sure everything fits up tight. Get it all put back in there so it's all nice and tight. Get all the gears meshed back down. And I still got to get this pushed back in there. You can see it off a little bit. So I'll work on getting those put back together. And we'll be back. Okay, it just took a little pressure to get that back down and get it seated. So everything is now seated. All right. Now I'm going to take a little lube the gears. To be honest, I really don't know how much lube to put on it. So we'll just kind of put some lithium grease on the gears. And I use a toothpick to kind of spread it around. Try and get it out where it belongs on everything. And I put a little extra here and then use a toothpick to kind of spread it. You know, maybe if I had a little brush, I could brush it on. Figure the thought process here is I get it in one area. And I'm probably using way too much. I I assume that. You know, if I get it on the teeth, then the gears will mesh and we'll spread it to the other gears, right? And how that works. So just gonna spread it out. Like I said, just figuring as his teeth start rolling against each other and meshing, they'll one will lube the other. I don't know, we'll see. Either that or we're gonna wear the gears out, one or the other, huh? Don't know what's too much. Well, just get muddy, just get greasy, right? Just get greasy. Maybe do it before I put these things in. Grease them all before I put them in. I might the next one I do, I might try that. See how that works out. All right. So put it on there. Grab yourself a little servo horn. Yep, spread the grease out. All right, we've rebuilt the servo. All right, I'll put the screws back in, energize it, put it back in the helicopter, and let it rip. Thanks for watching. Once again, here's the picture of the grease that I used. And this is the servo gear set that I got for the KD1. Got this from Hobby Authority. And this is the Xpert KD1 servo, rebuilt, ready to go back in a heli.